Hi, Minesh Baxi here, and I have an interesting guest with me today, Barbara Boldt. Barbara, welcome.
Thank you, Minesh. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you are an expert in presentation skills. So we'll talk more about that. I met Barbara through Troy Chamber of Commerce, and she's somebody who's out there helping people improve, especially non-native speakers, on presentation skills. Is that correct?
Yes, non-native speakers of English who need to present effectively in English. That's
Fantastic.
my sweet spot.
Very good. So let's start with your background a little bit, because when I was reading your LinkedIn profile and a few other things, I saw that you have traveled quite a bit.
Yes, I actually lived abroad for 19 years. And it was interesting because I'm one of those people who expatriated myself.
Really?
Yes, I was not sent by a company. I just went. I didn't exactly just go, but
Sure.
I took a holiday, met someone, went back, and ended up living in Italy for 11 years.
Wow.
And then moved to Switzerland and lived there for another 8. So,
Beautiful places, I'm sure.
Very beautiful.
I'm
very
looking to go to
beautiful.
Italy this October because I was talking to my son who's 12, and I said, where do you want to go? One of the places he said, Italy. So obviously we'll go, right?
It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
Wow, I'm
Gorgeous.
looking forward to it.
It'll be fun.
I'm going in early October. Is that a good time to go?
Perfect time.
Perfect time,
Totally
right? I hear less
fantastic.
crowds.
Fewer crowds, and also the weather's still very good.
Okay.
You can basically travel in Italy for most of October safely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And you've been to Switzerland.
Well, I lived in Switzerland for 8 years. I was in 2 different cities, one in the German-speaking part and one in the French-speaking part. The city in the German-speaking part messed up my German, but I did become not really fluent, but intermediate in French, living in Lausanne, which is another very beautiful place.
Wow.
Really
So you have got,
gorgeous.
so if somebody's out there wanting to know more about where to go in Italy and Switzerland to enjoy, you are the person to talk to as well.
I can be a tour guide.
Tour guide. Now, you taught skills in presentation there as well, correct?
I actually learned to teach presentation skills in Italy. I taught for a language school in Milan that had a very unique way of teaching English. We basically threw people into exercises and saw what they could do, and then whatever they couldn't do, we would teach them. And that's where I learned to teach presentation skills. So I started out mostly with Italians, but then applied those skills to other nationalities as well. And I figure I have taught people from about 35 different countries
Wow.
over the years. It wasn't all in Milan. Some of that was in Switzerland as well. But I have a lot of experience listening to what people are trying to say and helping them say that
Interesting.
effectively.
So let's talk quickly about why do these people reach out to you in your area of expertise, like we said, non-native people, speakers, presentation skills.
Well, a lot of them are in jobs where they need to be able to present effectively. They may be in meetings, they may be leading team meetings, and they need to be communicating well because it's often the case that their team is multicultural. So maybe all of them are non-native speakers of English, but English is the language of the team, and that can create obviously a lot of confusion. What's interesting about non-native speakers trying to communicate effectively in English is they're all, I won't say doing it badly, but they're all doing it with different things behind them. And it's their culture that's actually coming through in the way they're speaking English. And you know this because you're in a multicultural marriage, so I'm sure you've had this experience. But if you've got people from 2 different places communicating in English, there can be a lot of misunderstanding because in some cases, the whole message isn't being delivered very explicitly. And oftentimes from other cultures, people are used to not having to say everything and the other person fills in the blank. Well, that doesn't work well when you've got 2 different minds. They're going to fill in that blank differently. So I always say that it's often not about English level. Someone's English can be really decent, but they're speaking English with the same pattern of communication from their mother tongue. And that may mean that their sentences are long. That may mean they're not super explicit. It can mean a variety of different things coming from the different languages and cultures.
I totally agree. Like, for example, I'm from India, and I grew up speaking other languages compared to English, right?
Right.
So non-native is my thinking language sometimes. And we are used to certain expressions which we try to convert them into English, and they're not exactly the same. You understand
They come
what I'm
out
talking?
funny, yeah.
They come out funny.
Yeah.
For example, certain words as well. For example, one of the words which is common in India is more hand, but I might mean my arm.
Okay.
So that might be a confusing thing.
Right.
And then close and open in some cases might be confusing to people because close the light. But it is actually switch off the light, right?
Right.
And so on and so forth. So the expression I'm used to in Indian language may not be the same that people in US who have, typically grown up with that American English
Right.
have the same connotation for the words that I'm trying to say. And my wife is born and brought up here. She's of Chinese descent. But her English obviously is a little different, so she has had to get used to my English as well. And that's always
sure.
quite funny as well. So what are some of the things you walk people through as they try to learn presentation skills?
I like to approach it from the standpoint of a process. Obviously, we talk about structure, so you need a beginning, a middle, and an end. I like to teach people about signposting. Signposting is language that you use throughout your presentation that leads your audience through the presentation. So it's now, I finished all I have about this topic, now I'm going to move on to that kind of thing. And the funny thing is, it's very simple language. Sometimes it's as simple as, that's all. However, in the human brain, it triggers the brain to start paying attention again.
Very good.
So it's a way that you pull the audience back to you. If you're quote unquote droning on about something technical, for example, in the meat of your presentation, people might tune out. We're dealing with the attention span of a goldfish these days, about 8 seconds. So it doesn't take people long to get distracted. But by using these small, simple words, you can pull people back to you. And I always joke that the most effective signpost is, I'm done. That's the one when everybody, they sit right up, and they're
lunch gong.
Exactly. They pay right attention. But there's language that you can build in your presentation that helps people understand where you're going and then keeps them with you. So that's one thing I like to teach people. And I developed that when I was teaching in Europe, but it works perfectly well with native speakers as well. It's something that we all should do.
Well, we all need presentation skills. I homeschool my children, and one of the skills I want to make sure my children are really, really good at are presentation skills.
Yeah.
My daughter is a natural at it. She's definitely very talented. My son is not so much. He has more practice required in that area. So he has gone through presentation skills at a young age of speaking.
Good for him.
And he's 12, so he's gone through at the age of 10 and 11, because I knew, and I know very well from my own experience, that technical skills are good, but at some point you have to communicate your point across to people who don't have the same level of technical knowledge,
Right.
or they may have a reason to not want to listen to you because they generally feel that you are trying to sell them or whatever else it is, and they need to learn from what you are talking about, and the presentation skills are very critical as well. So do you teach in schools, colleges? Do you teach in offices? Where do you teach people?
I still teach in an executive MBA program in Switzerland.
Oh,
Actually, I
interesting.
leave in 2 weeks for that.
Oh, great.
And they are all managers. The average age in those programs is usually around 36 or 7. So they've worked, and they all work in English pretty much, but they have all different mother tongues. So they sometimes, what's interesting is they sometimes have the feeling that they're really good presenters, but they're really good presenters in their mother tongue, and in English they have some issues. So I end up sorting them out a little bit and helping them understand how their message might not be getting across as clearly as it needs to be in English.
Interesting.
American English is an extremely explicit way of communicating. You have to spell things out for us. We don't do nuance well. We don't do things implied. We often don't pick up. And people from other cultures have to really get that for you to communicate effectively, particularly with an American audience, you have to spell things out. But I still teach at one university in Switzerland. I teach people from companies. I'm actually about to launch a new presentation skills course with a colleague for corporate use. We are marketing it to companies. And that we are looking at classroom size of about 8 people who need to up their game. What I always say about communication or presentation skills in particular, if you can do that well, you can set yourself apart from the crowd. So for anyone who's looking to get promoted or has been promoted and needs to make an impression on the people they're dealing with in a boardroom or whatever the case might be, learning to present well is very worthwhile.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from some of the people that you've helped improve their presentation skills?
It's interesting. My students in Switzerland are the ones I hear from still. And I stopped teaching in the master's level program in 2016. So it's been about almost 4 years. But I get regular LinkedIn posts from my students, from messages saying, I had to promote to my boss yesterday and I pulled out my notes from your class and I used them and I made a great impression. So I always say it's a life skill.
It is a life skill, and I totally agree with you. And you need presentation skills everywhere in life, because whenever you are talking to an audience, doesn't matter how big the audience is, if you want to communicate more effectively, get them to be on your side, see the point that you're making, align them towards the direction you want to go. Obviously, presentation skills are very critical in that respect. Any stories that stand out from people that have been benefited from your...
There's one story that I often tell that is about a student of mine from the Swiss classroom. He was Hungarian. And in the Hungarian school system, you never have to stand up and present. And for Americans, that's really hard to imagine because we start standing up in classrooms about third grade. It's very early. And interestingly, people from around the world are envious of that. I've heard that so many times. Oh, you guys are so lucky because you start presenting early. Well, this young man had not had any exposure. And of course, his English was a bit rocky at the beginning too. I think he was an engineering student. But he took on board everything that I gave in the class. It was 7 weeks, 28 hours. And by the end of that course, he could have been a radio or a TV announcer. He was standing still. He was pausing. It was so amazing, the transformation in him. And that's actually one of the things that I find the most gratifying about what I do is that I watch people transform. I take them from where they are at the beginning, and then we work on whatever it is they need to work on to take them to a really different place so that they have more confidence. They're not in their own way. That's often the way I refer to it.
Wow.
They're not moving around too much. They're not doing and ah, all of those things that are distractions. And when I train people, I say, we need to get you out of your own way.
Yes,
so that
I
your
totally
message
agree.
lands.
Yes, I totally agree with you. So if somebody wants to get hold of you, Barbara, how would they get hold of you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn.
You're
That's
on LinkedIn.
one way. Yes.
They need to obviously know the name correctly, right?
Yes, my company is called Boldt Global, and my last name is Boldt. So you can look for me on LinkedIn as Barbara Boldt. I have a website, boltglobal.com,
Very
which
good.
has just been revamped and it's pretty new. So I'm proud of that.
Congratulations.
And I will be putting out content, and there will be a capture type of email
So
where
they
you
can get
put your
information
email
about-
and get information. I'm not quite ready yet with the first thing I'm going to be giving away, but that is going to be happening in probably the next 4 weeks. So I'm very excited about letting people know more about who I am, what I know, and how I can help them.
Yeah, and I agree with you. People need presentation skills.
They
And
absolutely
especially you're
do.
talking about non-native speakers, they have a bigger barrier to overcome. Not only do they have to think in their language and then communicate what you have, but they also need to have presentation skills to make sure the message is being heard correctly as well. And I
Exactly.
think
So
that's
there
very
is
important.
a little extra work for them to do. But I really love working with them because often they're the most grateful. They're
Yes.
like, wow, this is cool, and I really needed this skill, and now I have it. So
Wow.
that's gratifying for me too.
Fantastic. So great. So you heard here from Barbara. If you are somebody who is looking to polish presentation skills, or you are a non-native speaker and you are like, I really could use help right now, Barbara would be your coach to help you get trained in that direction. And Barbara, thanks for coming. And
Thank you.
if you are somebody who's watching this and you have a great story to tell, you have a business that you want to promote, and you want to be interviewed, I would love to have you come on the show as well. Barbara, thanks again.
Thank
have
you,
a great day.
Minesh.